Advancements in artificial intelligence have helped drive tremendous innovations in science, engineering, medicine, research and development, among many other fields. But that innovation has also led to the creation of the robo-taxi. In 2022, tech company Waymo started offering its driverless robo-taxis to the general public in Phoenix, Arizona. But will a robo-taxi service soon come to a city near you? Financial advisor Mark Gravachewski is joining us now on Zoom to break it down for us. Good morning, Mark. Mark, I was so excited to get to it. I totally buffed up that whole thing.
We're just going to chalk it up on a Monday morning on a new year.
Yes, but tell me more about this Waymo and the technology it uses within its robo-taxis.
Yeah, look, at a very basic level, Ava, many of today's new vehicles use artificial intelligence, cameras, sensors to, automatically adjust your steering wheel to help keep you within the traffic lanes, or it may automatically apply the brakes to avoid a collision. Now, kind of on that higher end of of that spectrum, some automakers like Tesla, Mercedes-Benz use what's called self-driving technology. And this is where the vehicle can actually take control of steering, acceleration, navigation, and braking, but it still requires the driver to sit in that driver's seat to be able to intervene and take control of the vehicle at any moment. But Waymo's taxis are truly autonomous. When that robo taxi pulls up to the curb to pick you up, Ava, there is literally no one in that car.
So with no one actually driving the vehicle, obviously safety is a giant concern. So just how safe are these autonomous robo-taxis?
In 2023, Waymo claims its robo-taxis were involved in only 3 crashes that resulted in minor injuries to passengers. And that's over the course of the 7.1 million miles its robo-taxis had driven over the course of that year. Now, based on similar data, Ava, Waymo contends that human-driven cars are actually 4 to 7 times more likely to get in a crash that results in injury. But many critics argue these robotaxis haven't been used in cities with adverse weather. They also have concerns about the safety of autonomous vehicles to operate in highly congested environments like a Chicago, like a New York City, that are filled with, moving obstacles, erratic movements, and often unpredictable scenarios.
So you touched a little bit on this, but where do Waymo's robo-taxis currently operate? And Mark, can we soon expect to see them here in the Quad Cities?
Here in the Quad Cities, Ava, might be a little bit of a stretch for now, at least. But right now, Waymo is the only company in the United States that's licensed to operate a commercial robotaxi service. But a number of competitors are set to, kind of test the waters in the upcoming years. Currently, Waymo only operates in Phoenix, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. However, it is looking to expand its operations into Miami, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, even Tokyo, Japan. Now, it's likely that Waymo will first focus on, the larger cities where that larger consumer base can justify those high operating costs of these robotaxis. So, Quad Cities might be some time down the road.
As the world's leading provider of AI technology, NVIDIA has become a global phenomenon. Last week, NVIDIA officially surpassed technology giant Apple to become the world's largest and most valuable company. Wall Street has also sent its stock price soaring. In 2023, NVIDIA's stock price rose 239%. So far this year, NVIDIA's stock price has risen another 200%. Financial advisor Mark Gravachewski joining us now live on Zoom to break this down for us. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Devin. Happy Monday. Great to see you again, as always.
Absolutely. Now, for those of us who might not be too familiar with NVIDIA, give us a little background on the company.
The rise of NVIDIA, Devin, it's really a fascinating and captivating story. Look, NVIDIA started out as this small, unknown company that provided enhanced graphics primarily to the video game industry. And yes, I said that correctly, Devin, for video games. Now, its breakthrough moment, so to speak, was its invention of what's called the graphics processing unit, or GPU, which is essentially a very powerful microchip. Now, over the years, NVIDIA has improved its GPU technology to provide that speed and power that's needed to run those AI applications. Today, NVIDIA has become the world's leading supplier of both AI hardware and software. And it's no surprise, it's quickly become that global face of this AI movement.
Well, as I just mentioned, last week, NVIDIA surpassed Apple to become the world's most valuable company. What does this say about the global demand for AI technology?
Ooh. With the market cap of around $3.6 trillion, NVIDIA has literally come out of nowhere to become the world's most valuable company. Now, if you look at that top 10 list of the world's most valuable companies, the biggest trend, Devin, that immediately stands out to me is that 8 of the 10 either create AI technology or heavily use AI technology. The only exceptions are number 6, Saudi Aramco, which is a Saudi Arabian oil company, and number 10, Berkshire Hathaway. And if you look at the top 5, number 2, Apple, then Microsoft, Amazon, and Alphabet are all some of the largest buyers of the AI technology being produced by who? By NVIDIA. Now, in December, NVIDIA is expected to release its latest AI technology called Blackwell. And there is already a 12-month wait list for companies all over the world wanting to get their hands on this latest Blackwell technology.
All right, well, we really want to know this question. What are some of the bigger developments we're seeing in the use of AI?
We're still in the initial stages of this AI movement, but companies have already been embracing AI technology to one, reduce their operating costs, and two, to develop those new goods and services, that they can then present to the consumer marketplace. In the workplace, we're already seeing, tremendous advancements in robotics and in automation. But for me, a really exciting part of AI is in research and development. AI is already being used in the early detection of Alzheimer's. It's already being used in the research and development of new drugs, new medicines. So it's completely understandable why Wall Street is so excited about this, untapped potential of artificial intelligence and how it can literally transform our daily lives, but also ultimately the broader U.S. economy.
Over the past 8 years, Bitcoin has captured the center of attention in global cryptocurrency movement. As the world's most recognized cryptocurrency, its popularity has been primarily driven as a type of high-risk investment. Recently, many investors have been heavily rewarded, and since November 4th, the day before the election, the price of Bitcoin has risen by $34,000, a gain of nearly 50%. Financial advisor Mark Grevicheski joining us now live on Zoom to break this down for us. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Devin. Great to see you again.
Yeah, so Bitcoin, it can be a confusing subject. Give us a brief outline of what it actually is.
Bitcoin was created, back in 2008 as the world's first cryptocurrency, and it was created by an anonymous individual or group of individuals. No one really knows for sure. Now, as a digital currency, it exists only in electronic form. In other words, there are no physical banknotes or coins. It's also what we call a decentralized currency. No government owns it, and it lies outside the realm of any banking system. But its extreme price volatility actually makes it a horrible form of currency. Instead, its rise to prominence, its rise to fame has been more as a type of high risk investment. 10 years ago, Devin, get a load of this. You could have bought a single Bitcoin for under $100. Last week, as you mentioned, the price of Bitcoin broke the 100,000 mark for the first time in history. Already this morning, Devin, it's trading a bit over $104,000.
So why have we seen such a big rise in Bitcoin over the past month and a half?
Yeah, we need to understand that Bitcoin, it's a type of global currency. It can be bought and sold by investors, financial institutions, even by individual countries all over the world. Now, the US historically has been a bit hesitant to kind of fully embrace the cryptocurrency industry, and admittedly with kind of some legitimate concerns behind that. But the US is the world's leading economy, and President-elect Trump has vowed to make the United States the cryptocurrency capital of the world. And that focus of the US now becoming a major factor in the global cryptocurrency industry has sent the price of Bitcoin soaring. The day after the November 5th election, Bitcoin jumped almost 12% to $75,000. And as I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, this morning, its price has already jumped to over $104,000.
Staggering. But the cryptocurrency industry is not without its controversies. Even today, the industry faces claims of fraud and theft. How does President-elect Donald Trump ensure there are still adequate regulatory practices in place?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Devin. Look, the industry, it does kind of have this notorious reputation for almost kind of being like the Wild West. It has a long history of fraud, of theft, of corruption. It's a very challenging balancing act. For years, nations all over the world, including their leaders, have really struggled with trying to balance, on one hand, allowing that investment in innovation within the crypto industry, and secondly, trying to provide some type of regulatory framework around it. Now, the biggest criticism of Biden was that his regulatory oversight of the crypto industry was too heavy handed. It forced much of the investment and innovations within the industry to flee the United States and move overseas, especially to Europe and Asia. But Trump's biggest risk will be if his regulatory framework is too weak. Because if people don't have confidence in the cryptocurrency industry, they're simply not going to put their money at risk.
The way we define wealth can be a very subjective measure, but ask yourself this question. How much money would you need to consider yourself to be wealthy? Would it take $1 million, or would it take less, or maybe even more to meet your definition of wealthy? Financial advisor Mark Ravicheski is joining us now on Zoom to break it down for us. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning, Ava. I'm doing well, thank you. Good to hear you again.
Nice, nice. Good to hear from you too. Well, Charles Schwab recently came out with a nationwide survey of how Americans define wealthy. What did we learn from this report?
Well, obviously, how we quantify what it is to be wealthy, varies from one person to the next. But this study suggests, Ava, that how we define wealthy and financially comfortable is heavily influenced by our age. The older we are, the more money we typically feel we need, to meet that personal threshold of how we define wealth. On average, Ava, Americans believe it takes $2.5 million of net worth to be considered wealthy. to be financially comfortable, Americans, again, on average, state they need a net worth of about 778,000. Now, net worth is defined as the value of all of your assets less any liabilities. It's what you would have left if you sold all of your assets and paid off your debt. But for baby boomers, which is the oldest generation born between 1948 and 1964, they say they need $2.8 million to feel wealthy and $780,000 to feel financially comfortable. And as you can see, the younger you are, typically the less money you need to feel either wealthy or financially comfortable. Just look at Gen Z, which is the youngest generation born between 1997 and 2002. Their wealth requirements are about half the national average.
And Mark, how does the variable of where you live impact your view on wealth?
Yeah, obviously, your cost of living does play a major factor. Someone who lives here, in the Quad Cities will likely have a different benchmark of wealth from someone who lives in a major metropolitan city or a high-cost state like California or maybe even New York. For example, residents of San Francisco, Ava, have a threshold of $4.4 million before they would consider themselves wealthy. To feel financially comfortable, they need $1.5 million. Those numbers are almost double the national average.
Wow, that's honestly shocking.
Well, that's what you get when you live in those high cost states. Everything costs a lot more.
Right, right, that makes sense. And how confident are Americans that they can achieve their desired level of wealth?
Yeah, no, great question, Ava. Obviously, the younger you are, it tends to be the more confident you are. You can, achieve your definition of wealth. You younger people just have a lot more time to save and build up their assets over time. Overall, though, Americans say their biggest challenge, not much of a surprise, to saving money and achieving their wealth, is inflation. The national inflation rate has remained above that Federal Reserve 2% target rate now for 46 consecutive months, dating all the way back to February of 2021. So Americans are kind of going through this balancing act of trying to pay for all of their living expenses, which now cost a lot more, and trying to save for their retirement.
For many people, gold is typically associated with jewelry and other high-end luxury items. But for decades, people around the world have also used gold as a form of investment. Last week, the price of gold reached an all-time record high of nearly $2,700 an ounce. Over the past 12 months, the price for an ounce of gold has risen by 45%. Now, financial advisor Mark Grevacheski joining us now on Zoom to break this down. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Devin. Good to see you again, as always.
So talk about, why do investors use gold as an investment?
Well, if you think about it, literally for centuries, gold has proven its ability to store wealth. Throughout history, we've seen, individual companies or national economies and even entire countries collapse, and those respective stocks, bonds, currencies quickly become worthless or very close to worthless. But investors buy gold and other precious metals because they see it as a constant, tangible asset that will always have some type of value. So gold is often viewed as a safe haven or a type of hedge against global uncertainty and market turbulence.
So explain, why have gold prices been rising so much over the past year?
Oh yeah, they've really been going up through the roof here. Look, as you just mentioned earlier on, the price for a single ounce of gold, all-time high of around $2,700. So far this year, it's up 29%. Remember, gold, like many other precious metals, is a global commodity, subject to the global forces of supply and demand. And during times of global and economic uncertainty, that rise in global demand for gold inherently drives gold prices higher. But just look at some of the anxieties that investors have been facing. The war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The war between Israel and Hamas has started to gradually expand to other countries in the Middle East. And now there are some questions being raised about the health of the U.S. economy. So all of this apprehension, all of this anxiety has many investors buying gold as a type of hedge against further uncertainty.
So if investors do want to invest in gold, how can they go about doing that?
If you do buy gold, make it a part of your broader investment portfolio, because like many investments, gold can be extremely volatile with these large up and down swings in its price. But unlike most stocks and bonds, gold doesn't pay any dividend or interest. Your gain or loss is based solely on the up and down movement in the price of gold. So if you're relying on a stream of dividends or interest payments to kind of help supplement your retirement or living expenses, gold won't provide that income stream.
Without question, Americans love their coffee. For many of us, that first cup of coffee in the morning is an essential to start the day, but coffee prices have been rising significantly higher. Over the past 2 years, the global price of coffee beans has more than doubled. Financial advisor Mark Ravichesky is joining us now on Zoom to break it down for us. Good morning, Mark.
Morning to you, Ava. And yes, hail to the true breakfast of champions, the mighty coffee bean.
Absolutely. I agree with you. That's how I start my morning every day. So this story is devastating to me. So Mark, why have coffee prices been rising so high the past couple of years?
Yeah, let's dive into this a little bit more, Ava. Look, there are two main varieties of coffee bean that really drive that global consumer marketplace. The first is the Arabica bean, and the second is what's called the Robusta bean. Since January 2023, the price for Arabica beans has increased over 100%. For the Robusta bean, its price has risen over 200%. Now, according to industry experts, a major factor has been, high temperatures and droughts in the key global regions of production. That, along with the fact, the global supply of coffee beans really comes from relatively few regions around the world. For example, Brazil and Vietnam have been significantly impacted by this, potent combination of temperatures and droughts. Combined, those two countries account for about 56% of the world's total coffee bean population. But also global demand for coffee has been steadily rising. And that demand is being led by China and its massive population of over 1.4 billion people. A lot of China's, younger, growing middle class population has been switching from tea to coffee.
I mean, I don't blame them, but compared to the rest of the world, how much coffee do Americans typically drink?
Ava, the United States, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier on, is by far the largest consumer of coffee in the world. The next closest country is Brazil, but it's kind of a distant second. This year, Ava, Americans will consume roughly 3.5 billion pounds of coffee. That translates to about 517 million, yes, 517 million cups per day. 73% of U.S. adults will drink at least 1 cup per day. And personally, I have no idea how the remaining 27% of the population makes it through the day. 36% will drink 3 to 5 cups per day. 93% drink coffee at least once per week. So yes, Ava, Americans definitely love that cup of coffee.
And I absolutely believe it. Honestly, I'm in that 36% that drink 3 to 5 cups a day.
I was wondering if there's like a 6 to 7, 6 to 8. I think I'd probably fall in that, but
That's
yes.
that's exactly where I would fall as well, honestly, like full disclosure. But Mark, given the ongoing rise in prices, what are some of the prices people are currently paying for their cup of coffee?
Yeah, understandably, coffee prices vary significantly, from one state to the next. Prices also tend to be, much more expensive in urban areas, rather than in rural communities. But the national average price for a cup of coffee at a quick serve restaurant or coffee shop is $3.08. For you latte drinkers, I'm certainly not one of them. The average price jumps to $5.64. Of all 50 states, the most expensive state for your cup of coffee is Hawaii, where the average price is $4.98. Conversely, the cheapest is Nebraska at $2.12. Locally, as with many things, the price is heavily dependent on which side of the river you buy that cup of coffee. Illinois has the 24th highest average price at $3.07. But look, if you go to Chicago, that price can easily jump to over $5. And finally, Iowa has the 44th lowest average price for that delicious cup of coffee at just $2.70.
That is absolutely what I like to hear. I live in Iowa, so I love to hear that.
Well, I live in Illinois, work in Iowa, so yeah, definitely load up with my coffee on the Iowa side of the border.
Yes, and it does help if you don't get, you just get your coffee black. That definitely does bring the price down a little bit.
And another thing, Ava, I don't get decaf. What's the point, really, with
I
decaf?
agree with you. I feel like that's just a sick joke. Nobody needs decaf.
Is it really necessary? Why don't stores just ban it?
I agree with you. I agree with
Because then
you.
you and I, we go to get a cup of coffee, and maybe by mistake we get decaf, and our morning is ruined.
My morning's ruined. Sometimes I'm adding like a couple extra shots. There's been times I've gone to Starbucks, I've ordered an Americano, and then I'm like, could you throw an extra shot of coffee in there? And they're like, that's 5 shots of espresso. I'm like, I know. Just hand it over. Just hand it over.
That or simply just munch on used coffee grounds. There you go.
I've never done that, but maybe next time we talk, I'll have a different
Well,
answer.
with
I'll try it
prices
out.
rising so high, hey, grab a mouthful of used coffee grounds. That'll certainly light that morning fire.